Namaste, astrology adventures. Today, I want to talk about omens and how we can use them in astrology. Let's discuss. I'm your host, Paul Manley, and you're watching Light on Vedic Astrology. So, omens are signs that foretell something about the future. So, you might ask, does that mean that the astrology chart itself, the natal chart itself, is an omen? I think it's a great question. I'd say the answer is absolutely yes. It's a very complex and comprehensive omen. I mean, the moment of birth lays out a map that we can use throughout our life, contains many keys to the future. So, yes, by definition, this is an omen. It's a moment that is a sign. So, listen to what the great sage Sri Yukteswar has to say. A child is born on that day and at that hour when the celestial rays are in mathematical harmony with one's individual karma. His horoscope is a challenging portrait revealing his unalterable past and its probable future results. And I love how he says probable, because it's not fatalistic, that we do have choice. So omens are integral to astrology. Why? Because omenology, or nimitta, it's called nimitta in Sanskrit, is one of the 6 systems in Jyotisha. Jataka, natal chart horoscopy, is one of the systems. Nimitta is one of the systems, and there are 4 others. So I had a direct experience with omenology, study of omens, when I started working with a street astrologer while I was in Mysore studying Ashtanga Yoga with Patabi Joyce. So I found this astrologer who did readings, prashna or question astrology, not natal chart horoscopy. He didn't calculate a chart. He just used the moment that someone asked a question, and he'd look at the chart of that moment and he'd give the answer. But he did something interesting. He induced an omen, you might say, because he had the clients roll 9 cowrie shells. So it's setting up an omen. The number of shells that turn over on their back reveal a planet. So that planet becomes key for answering the question. So this is one way that he worked with omens. But so I begged him to study with him, and he eventually agreed. I had to beg him though. And so he said, notice everything. Notice what's going on when a person asks a question. Where are they standing? What are they wearing? Where's the sky? What are animals doing? Are there birds? Is it a peaceful atmosphere? Notice everything, essentially. The answer could be revealed in what you are seeing. Okay? So this is omenology. So one time I was sitting with him, we were having like a lesson, and this guy ran into his room. At that point, he had an office in a hotel. So I studied with him for a couple of months. So partway through, he got an office. In any case, so this guy ran in a frantic mood, and he said, "She's left me again. Will this time she come back? Will she come back this time?" And he said very calmly, "Throw the shells, throw the cowrie shells." And I kid you not, one of the shells rolled off the table onto the floor and out the door. Honest to God. And I was shocked. And he looked over at me and kind of winked to make sure that I got the omen. And then he said, This time she's not coming back, but don't worry, it's going to work in your favor. So this was a dramatic moment where he used the omen to you might say enhance the prashna. He still did the prashna, but he took that omen very seriously. So he encouraged me to do the same, notice everything. So I started doing that. So Carl Jung calls omen, describes omens as synchronicity, and that's a term that he coined that means a meaningful coincidence. So I started noticing meaningful coincidences that when I gave readings. This is how I use it in astrology. That's how I use it to this day. So I'll give you several examples. And so one time I was giving a reading to a gentleman, and he said he hates going over to his wife's house for dinner with her whole family. And he says it's very uncomfortable for him, like he's kind of wandered into the wrong class at school, is how he described it. And as he was describing this situation, I looked out the window, and there was a cow right at the edge of the fence, trying to get in. He was looking over the fence. He was trying to get across, and he looked dejected. And so I said, "Do you feel like an outsider?" And he goes, "Yeah, definitely. That's exactly how I feel. I feel like an outsider." So that was one way that I used omen. Another time I was talking to a woman, and she was describing her relationship, and how she feels like her partner is dominating her, and she has to kind of accommodate him, or else he'll just explode and it will be an awful scene. And as she was saying this, we have a neighbor who has roosters. The rooster jumped onto the top of my bird feeder and gave this loud cock-a-doodle-doo, just really loud, like a big statement. And so I said, "Do you feel like you need to find your voice? Like you need to be able to speak your truth?" She goes, "Yeah, that's really what I need to do, but it's tough." So that was another example of how the rooster was representing her and what she could do. She just needed to be herself. So a really strange situation happened another time. A woman came in to see me in person, and she had just taken on, she had just become a guardian for this boy. And she started describing the situation, and she'd never been a guardian before, but somehow she was in this role. And so she started describing the relationship with the boy that the boy had with his father, and describing how it's a very tense relationship. And in that moment, that very moment, a gecko, which is a type of lizard, jumped off my file cabinet onto the ground and made a thud. And it landed on top of another gecko, and it had his head, the other gecko's head, inside its mouth. I was like shocked. The thud itself was a shock, but I've never seen that situation before, and I've never seen it since. It was astonishing. And so I said to her, "Is there violence?" And she goes, "Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. His father said, if you don't leave, I'm going to kill you." I was like, wow. I mean, this stuff really works. I mean, that's a dramatic example. A common a frequent event happens when the lawn gets mowed here. So these egrets come, and they're beautiful. They fly with beautiful wings, wide wingspans, and they land softly on the grass. And it's a sight. And they come as a group, a flock. And so I was talking to a woman. This time I think it was on the phone, and a similar situation where she was feeling very isolated. She was in a relationship, but she was feeling really isolated. It wasn't going well, and and I saw this beautiful scene of these egrets landing on the grass in a flock of maybe 12, about a dozen, something like that. And I said, do you need to find your community, find your support system? She goes, yeah, I think that's what I need to do. So her isolation had become too much. She is in this very entangled relationship, and she needed her support. She needed to find her people, collect her people around her who could be of support. So that was less dramatic, and I may have just, because it's a common occurrence. Every time the lawn is mowed, the egrets come, but it happened at that very moment. That very moment. So, but you have to watch. You have to be aware that this could be going on, and it could enhance your reading, your interpretation of the chart. So this is a weird one. The last two I have that I want to share are weird and kind of disturbing. As if the gecko story was not disturbing, but this was kind of. So sometimes I eat food in my office, and ants can gather, and sometimes I started noticing that one would come out of my computer, one of these openings in the computer. So I was talking on the phone to this guy in India whose uncle was a politician, an influential politician who had a lot of contacts, if you know what I mean, And so he was talking about whether he should or shouldn't. He's asking whether he should or shouldn't accept his uncle's offer to help him start a business, like fund his operation. And as soon as he outlined what he wanted to do, a bunch of ants came out of my computer and started crawling on my keyboard. It was horrible. It was like, I'd never seen that. Like, that's a one, maybe two. I knew I had to clean this thing and get it taken care of. But this was like 30, and all at once. They just came. And so I go, so what would your father or your uncle do if he wasn't happy with the situation, how the business is going, or he wants more money in exchange from you? He says, well, he just send his contacts, in a group, like kind of like bully him. He had been bullied by his uncle before, but he'd like send these thugs, to in numbers to pressure him. So that's why he was ambivalent to start the business and take him up. But there's like the money, that support would have been good, but this was looking like a bad situation. So that was reflected in ants coming out of my computer. I haven't seen them since. I don't need it in my office anymore. This is something I think I got under control. So this is a recent one that happened last fall. I was talking to a woman who lived in Asheville, North Carolina. And so you may remember that in September last year, 2024, there was, at the end of September, there was the Hurricane Helene, and a lot of flooding took place in North Carolina. And that's a hilly area. So there was gulches and rivers. And so I was talking to this woman who was kind of shaken up. Her house was not damaged. She was fine, but there were, this is a big impact on their community. roads washed out. Some people had more serious situations, like her neighbor or neighbor in her community, not next door neighbor, but one of her neighbors. She lived in a gulch where there's a river. And so this is really strange. She was talking about the situation, how her neighbor, her house got washed down with her in it. And they didn't know if she was alive. So she was shaken up by this, by other things going on in the community. It was a tough time for her. But as she was saying this, so I had this cup of kombucha, which is a health drink. So I had this kombucha next to me, and as she was talking, I took a sip of the kombucha, and wouldn't you know it, there was a cockroach in my kombucha, and it got in my mouth, and I crunched on it, but didn't kill it. I spit it out, and it didn't die. There was the flood with the house and the lady in it getting in a very seriously dangerous situation. That's gross. I know. I'm sorry, guys, but it's the plain truth of what happened, and that was strange. But you notice what's happening during your discussion of astrology, whether you're giving a professional reading, doing a free reading for a friend, you pay attention, because the external world is reflecting our internal world. Something could be foretelling the future. So in this case, she eventually found out that this woman lost her house, lost a lot of her stuff, but she lived. So similarly, I guess the cockroach lived in any case. So honest truth, all of these examples, they kind of all add up to there's a lot going on that we don't pay attention to. So pay attention. While you're discussing astrology, there could be, the chart again itself is an omen. So we can gather a lot about the future, obviously. It's a predictive system, but we can enhance our understanding of the situation by what's going on around us. Okay, I'll leave you with that. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to our next video, hopefully tomorrow. Namaste.